Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparujade sangamata satavara ye sodavanta bamunchantu satang. So I welcome you all to this afternoon's reflection on the Dhamma the way it is, ultimate reality, absolute truth, whatever words you want to use to describe the most real, the most true, the most direct experience that we all share at this very moment, conscious awareness. The Buddha's teaching, one of the profound teachings that is good for meditation and reflection, is called dependent origination. Paticca samuppada, how one thing causes, depends upon another. And it starts out with Avijjā, which is the Pali word for ignorance. Ignorance of what? Does it mean you're uneducated or stupid or ignorant? In this case, Avijjā is not aware of your true nature, the Dhamma, ultimate reality. So this is what the world's population suffers from, is avijjās, because they are so conditioned by culture, by karma, by everything that they experience from the day they're born to the present moment, to believe in something that is not true. So then in dependent origination, Avijjā, Paccayā, Sankhārā, so it means this is the reason for conditions. Sankhārā is a Pali word for condition or phenomenon. So this avijjā is it's not about not understanding Buddha's teaching, because as individuals we can study Buddhism in universities, get PhD in Buddhist studies and Buddhist philosophies, and this is all quite possible to find all about Buddhism, because it's a very kind of popular subject in this time. But it's still not Dhamma. Buddhism is not the Dhamma. So we may be Pali scholars or experts on Buddhist studies and be able to quote scripture and everything, but if we have not realized Dhamma, we're still operating from Avijjā, Paccayā, Sankhārā. And of course this takes us to the end of the sequence of dependent origination, to dukkha, or suffering, sokha pariteva dukkha tomanat upayat, which means grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. It's this avijjā that is the the problem. And so the Buddhist teachings are all pointing. That's why they're not doctrinal teachings. It's not about we must believe what the Buddha taught, but they're pointing to the way to reflect on experience through wisdom, which is apparent here and now and timeless. That's the Dhamma. So the Dhamma is not some kind of esoteric, remote teaching, or something you've got to get after sitting in meditation for hours and fasting and trying to get the Dhamma, but it's what we call the awakened state of consciousness. Consciousness aware of itself, awake here and now. So samsara is the illusion that we regard as the real world or our reality. An illusion doesn't mean it's just made up of thin air, or doesn't. But it's seeing things in the wrong way. We see each other through very personal perceptions. You know, so in human society we have, in Sangha as well as any society on the planet, is based on personal relationships. And the divisive way of thinking, of dividing everything into male or female, or right or wrong, or black or white, or whatever, then we believe this is the real world. The real world is a world of division, contrast, of the best to the worst. And so this is Avijjā. It means ignorance of your true nature. So through investigating, like with Avijjā, you begin to see how, with ignorance, you begin to connect to the thinking process, to the grasping process, to sensory, conscious experiences. And we take everything in as if I am a real person, and I am somehow either very important or not important, or just an ordinary person, or a good person or a bad person. These are all illusions we project onto the conditions we're experiencing. With awakening, we begin to see everything's Dhamma. That it's not that samsara is not really something separate from the Dhamma, or the real world that we experience through the body and its senses. So this is like a reflection on the way it is. What is the way it is now is that the reality is consciousness. This is the reality of consciousness. If there was no consciousness, who would be around to notice anything, or where would the world be? The sun and moon and stars, planet Earth, the galaxies in outer space. Can they exist all on their own without consciousness? Consciousness is the ultimate reality. It has no beginning and no end, and it's here and now, apparent here and now, timeless. So waking up to Dhamma is beginning to realize your true nature for yourself. You're not believing in scriptural teachings or in just grasping the idea that I am the Dhamma, but you realize Bhajjatang Vaitita Pavinuhi, which means you must realize this for yourself. So the Buddha teachings are all pointers, directional signs, maps to use to begin to realize your true nature is not what you think or believe or been told. So it sounds, and when you talk like this, it makes it sound simple. And it is. But recognize that the thinking process, the earth, fire, water, air elements, space, and that. Space is simple, but earth, fire, water, and air are all the possible forms, variations on themes, on ideas, on what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, what we feel, what we think. It's all complicated. Because samsara is a very complicated place where it has just the things changing and good happens, bad happens, right, wrong, peace and war, and all the rest happen. These are complications of the 5 elements, the earth, fire, water, air, and space. So that's where the ignorance is. The avijjā is this clinging and identity to things that are ephemeral, changing, mutable, uncertain, unstable, and that leads to grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So when we expect to find permanent peace and permanent happiness in samsara, we're going to be disappointed. Because then there's grief with the loss of loved ones, anguish and despair haunt us in our lives, throughout our lives, because these are the result of this blind grasping of phenomena which changes and is unstable, uncertain, and not what you are at all. So we consider, why is there many social problems in the world? Why are there drug addicts and alcoholics and all these ways to change conscious experience? Because the consciousness through the senses is unstable and uncertain. The senses themselves are unstable and uncertain. The objects of the senses, it's all unstable, uncertain, changing, beyond our control to keep it and hold on to it and make it permanent in our lives. It's impossible that's the ultimate avijjā, to think we can stabilize phenomena, stabilize sankharas into kind of permanent positive states. That's a kind of idealism, but that's not Dhamma, that's not the way it is. What is stable is Dhamma, apparent here and now and timeless. So ask yourself, you know you're conscious. This is a fact that everyone will admit. Anyone here in this temple at this very moment knows that they're conscious. And so it's apparent here and now. But then one could pass out or die at any moment, faint or fall asleep. Are you conscious when you're sleeping? When you faint or have a heart attack, are you conscious? When the body dies, what happens to consciousness? If consciousness is taken personally, then death is like the death of one's self as a person, and that leads to a sense of bewilderment. Maybe we're glad to end our lives. Maybe we're depressed and want to end it all, or we want to. We believe we have a soul, or we believe that we'll go to heaven or hell, or we have all kinds of possible beliefs of what happens when we die. But as a person right now, individually speaking, we have different reactions to the possibility of dying. Because dying is about the end of conditioned phenomena. And then we try to imagine what's the end of conditioned phenomena. And you can't imagine anything. You can, what is your soul? Do you believe you have a soul, a personal, separate soul that is going to be reborn again in another state, depending on how virtuous or criminal you've been in this present form? You can believe anything you want. There's all kinds of possibilities for imagination. But as a person right now, I can't, as a person, I don't know what happens after death, because the body's still here and now. But if my refuge is in Dhamma, ultimate reality, apparent here and now and timeless, that's immutable, that you can trust. And it's this realization, this ultimate realization, that is the end of suffering. Because then one can bear with the problems of life, personal problems, physical problems, social problems that we have to experience in these separate forms. So the realization of Dhamma is a realization of it's Avijjā, or wisdom knowledge. It's profound knowledge. It's not knowledge you can acquire at a university or at a Dhamma center, or even your meditation, if it's all based on a person trying to get to Nibbana. You can't do it as a person. The personality never realizes Nibbana. So the check on the personality is to recognize the personality is a condition that changes according to other conditions. Just watch, just observe how your personality will change in just a few minutes. If somebody smiles or frowns at you, you have a reaction. Somebody says a word that pleases or displeases you, your personality will react to that. If somebody praises you and loves you and compliments you, then your personality is like this. And when they criticize you and blame you, then your personality is like this. What is aware? That awareness of the personality that changes according to conditions is mindfulness, awareness here and now, conscious awareness. And this is what bhavana, or meditation, really is. It's not about being someone who has samadhi or had insight, that's seen it in a personal way. So we can have experiences in meditation, we can have deep states of samadhi, and we have nimittas, signs, or beautiful signs. And then these are quite pleasant. We want them. We think we can take it personally, like I've spoken to God, or Dhamma is what I know. I'm Dhamma, and we can take it in a very personal way. But it's not personal. Dhamma is non-personal. It's not inside you, or in your brain, or heart. It's the reality of conscious awareness here and now, which is silence. Dhamma is silent, it doesn't have a language. So it can't speak, because it doesn't need language, because it's immutable, here and now, stainless and stable, silent. And when we realize this silence, this peace, silence is very peaceful. War is very noisy. Happiness can fluctuate into being very pleasant or exhilarating or wonderful. And so happiness is a very desirable state to have as an individual person. We want to be happy. Depression, misery is unpleasant. We don't want it. It's very nature. Personally, nobody wants depression. We want to get rid of it. What is the goal of life for most people is to find happiness. And so we might spend our whole lives trying to be happy, or convincing ourselves that life is wonderful or that we're happy. But then we have to lose what are closest to us, our parents, our teachers, our friends, brothers and sisters. And then we experience grief, which is not happy. So happiness through the senses is very unstable and changeable. A holiday in some marvelous resort might bring us a few moments of pleasure and happiness, but it's going to change, just like in the Caribbean these days with the hurricanes and earthquakes and fires. Get news from California about terrible forest fires, and California was always the kind of wonderful paradise you'd like to retire to in my generation. So the earth itself its natural state is to change. It's not a fixed phenomenon. It's not set in cement and secure. Planet Earth is unstable. So if our hope in life is to find permanent happiness on planet Earth, then this is going to lead to Soka pariteva dukkha tomanasa upayat, grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. Unless we awaken to our true nature, our real nature, which is not whether the earth lasts in our lifetime or disappears or whatever happens, our true refuge is in the Dhamma, absolute reality, the deathless, rather than trying to hold on to things whose very nature will only lead to grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So how do we see one another in daily life? We see each other always by separate names. We have, even when we ordain as monks or nuns, we take on separate names, Pali names. We see each other according to seniority, who ordained before who, and on like this. We see different forms of Buddhist tradition, the Tibetan tradition, the Mahayana tradition. We see Christian monks, nuns. We all see them in according to what they're wearing, how they behave. So our life is about the experience of change, relentless change, that we try to, and it's not always going to change the way we want it to. You may have noticed this by now, that change isn't a guarantee that it's going to get changed for the better. But if we think about it, then about the planet Earth dissolving into thin air, or the end of the world, or these kind of scenarios about complete destruction, these are quite depressing, because we see it in a personal way, like all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. What I depend on, my real world, is going to disappear or change in a way I won't be able to enjoy it or live in it. So doomsday scenarios make popular movies because they play upon this sense of fear and anxiety and death and ghosts and spirits and all kinds of imagined forms of doom and destruction. But when you realize your true nature is Dhamma, ultimate reality, then there's nothing to fear, whether the planet lasts another 1,000,000 years or disappears in the next 10 years or changes, becomes unlivable, whether we all have to move to Mars or the moon or whatever. These are people that are planning the future when the pollution of the planet is so bad we can't live on it anymore. These are imagined crises. And they can be interesting, because it's always, what we imagine can be very interesting, but it is imagination. It's about me living on Mars, or me having to survive on the moon, or me being caught up in the total catastrophe of doom of the planet. That's me as a person, when ultimately the body is going to die. That's its nature. And so it's important to ask yourself, are you really the body that you identify with? Is that your true nature? Now, this is a good question to reflect upon, because we live in a society that verifies our personal existence, our passports, our birth certificates, our photographs, make us all seem like reality is me as a person, me as this physical form. And that can change. The physical form is very changeable, very uncertain how long any of us are going to our bodies will last through time. But if our refuge is in ultimate reality, the Dhamma, then it doesn't matter. We begin to realize that ultimate reality is bliss. And we recognize this through conscious awareness. But bliss is peaceful. It has no extremity. It's not wonderful or horrible or changeable, pleasant or unpleasant. But when you develop, when you really trust in awareness as your refuge, then you begin to recognize bliss as ultimate reality. So it's not a destructive teaching about annihilation, oblivion, as some might assume, because our thinking minds can't reach that. Even the word bliss is a word that oftentimes means extreme kind of pleasurable, sensual experience. But in this context, it's the silence behind the noise, that the body, the thoughts, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, experience through the senses, operates in this silence. It's like the space in this temple allows everyone to be here at the same time. But the space, we think of my space, I belong here in this center point, Ajahn Sumedho, senior monk, and on like this. We have these conventions according to the phenomena and tradition. But these are artifices, they're artificial conditions, they're conventions. And when we identify and cling to convention, then we become very rigid. If you don't share the same conventions, if you act in a different way, then it upsets me, because you have to act like this convention and behave accordingly. And so we become very critical of others who don't share the same conventions. But conventions are artificial. They're impermanent, they're phenomenal. They can be useful because the conventions, the scriptures, the Buddhist scriptures, the Vinaya, the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts are all conventions. And if we cling to conventions, then we become very easily upset when somebody challenges those conventions. Because we feel this is the right way to do it, and if you don't do it the right way, then you're wrong in that, that is bad. So we make judgments, value judgments. And then there's conflict, there's snobbery, there's cruelty, arises from these rigid views of I'm right, you're wrong. But in ultimate reality, there's no right and wrong. It's where right and wrong disappear, dissolve. Good and bad, male and female, heaven and hell, true and false. These are words that we apply to phenomena, to earth, fire, water, air phenomena, because it has qualities that are pleasant or unpleasant. So phenomena is impermanent. Sape Sankhārā anicca, all conditions are impermanent. So there's good conditions and bad conditions. There's men, women, black people, white people, good people, bad people, according to the conditioned phenomenal world. But in ultimate reality, in Dhamma, there's no good people or bad people, right or wrong people. There are no people. People are just a word in the English language we apply to the individual human way of experiencing life. So if there's no good and bad, true or false, right or wrong, where are we? And that is the reality of awareness, being able to reflect on the sape sankhārā anicca, all conditions are impermanent. That's wisdom. That's a wisdom teaching. That's not a doctrine that you must believe in. It's not about believing everything is impermanent, but in reflecting, can you find something permanent that you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, or feel through your body and senses? You know, it's a challenge. In the beginning stages of my meditation, I felt challenged. I really thought maybe there are some conditions that are permanent, some that aren't. Because I'm a skeptical I have a skeptical personality. So then I thought, is there a condition that's permanent? And then the Buddha said, all conditions are impermanent. I said, well, if the Buddha said all conditions are impermanent, I believe that. But that's not bhavana, believing that. That's just believing something you've been told or read. So bhavana is investigating. Can you actually find, through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, feeling, can you find any permanent condition through the senses themselves or the objects that they refer to? And my insight was I couldn't find anything that was really permanent. And now, my age, old age, you feel the impermanence even stronger because it's very much affecting just the experience that I have through this body. But then, is there something permanent? And then this, as I let go of everything that was impermanent, all what I see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, feel, as I let go of everything, there's still silence. Can you let go of silence? You can add to silence by thinking. You can think about it or claim it as some kind of personal attainment or as something not worthy of your attention. But if you don't think, if you stop thinking and trying to define it or claim it in any personal way, it's apparent here and now and timeless. It's the Dhamma. It's not a thing that is impermanent. It's not a thing. A thing is a Sankhārā condition. So everything is impermanent. And in bhavana, or meditation, right meditation, we're beginning to investigate and realize this for yourself. Rather than just, so the Buddha said, so it must be true. That's belief. But the Buddha didn't want us to just believe in things. His teachings are not doctrinal teachings. Like most religions, are very doctrinal. You've got to believe in God or Jesus or Allah or something to be a member of religions that have doctrines that you have to grasp and believe in before you're accepted as a member of their convention. But the Buddha was challenging belief, because what he realized was Dhamma, not another belief in anything. So reflect on this, and it's, as you begin to trust your ability to reflect. It's not about thinking about it, or like the word contemplation can oftentimes imply thinking. But it's not to deny thinking, but thinking in a way of questioning. Am I really this physical body? This is all I am. Is my personality going to survive into another life? What will happen to me when the body dies? And that kind of question is, dissolves into thin air because there's no me. But if I see it in a personal way, then, which I can't anymore, I can't see it in a personal way. I know better. So the death of the body can be realized as bliss rather than, imagine when you're 90 years old and this old, worn-out body is no longer operative, gets cremated, that's the end of it. But my refuge isn't in the body. So the refuge is in Dhamma, which is apparent here and now, timeless. So that's what we mean by Dhamma. Dhamma to me now is ultimate reality, and any words that apply, but it's not reality in the way that we're conditioned to see it. Like the real world is like this. I've been accused sometimes by various people of not living in the real world, that I live in a kind of bubble here at Amaravati. It's not the real world. The real world is out there in London or someplace where you have family, you have a job, you have a telephone, you have a car, you have personal identities. And this is the real world for ignorant people that are still operating from Avijjā. So when we talk about the gate to the deathless is open, aparutadi sanghamatasatara, when I open this reflective event with that quote, the gate to the deathless is open, I always loved this particular quote from the scriptures. The gate to the deathless is open, and I thought, that's a wonderful thing to proclaim. It's like a proclamation rather than, I think the gate to the deathless is open for some people. Some people know the gate to the deathless is open for only Theravadan Buddhists of the Ajahn Sumedho tradition. That is really conceited. It's not about, the Ajahn Sumedho tradition didn't exist at the time when the Buddha proclaimed, aparutadi sanghamatasatara. What is a gate to the deathless is open, and then I can't think of the second verse. Yesoda wantava munjantu satang means trust in this, trust it. All you hear and listening and hearing this, trust the gate to the deathless is here and now and it's open, wide open, and realize it. And then the Four Noble Truths, the Paccayā, Samuppada, the dependent origination, all these are directional signs to that the deathless gate, the gate to the deathless is here and now, apparent here and now and timeless. So don't be weak about it or small-minded, but the gate is open and it's apparent here and now. And even though you're hearing this in words, you've got to realize this for yourself. Don't believe what I say. And what I say is more or less to encourage you. It's not doctrine I expect you to grasp. But it's like good news. The gate to the deathless is open. For those that can hear, those here present, trust in this. Put your faith in the deathless reality of Dhamma rather than in your own personal karmic conditioning, which can always lead to doubt and fear and anxiety and disappointment, grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So I offer this as a reflection for this afternoon.